Cable, and today I'm with Greg Neidlinger. Did I get that right? Oh, I got it right. And Greg is here in Madison, Georgia, and he teaches music, guitar, and we're going to go over just a little bit of the different things and different styles and different, like what brought Craig here to Madison and how you can get a hold of Craig if you'd like to take some lessons. But we're going to get into that in just a second. First, I want to say thanks and welcome to Channel 23.
Glad to have you here.
More than welcome. It is kind of, let me start from scratch. I didn't know you were here until you and I had spoken the other day down at the bank. And you do what? Tell our audience exactly what you do.
Okay, this is called, my studio is called Guitar 101. And what we do here is a professional studio. My wife teaches piano, and I run the studio, and I teach all the guitar. And I teach ages from 6 to 60. Basically, any style they want to do. And
so you can even teach me?
I could teach anybody.
He doesn't know what he's getting into here now. Oh, my
I taught a 5-year-old one time. I taught an 80-year-old guy. So pretty much spans all age ranges. Yeah.
What different styles of guitar do you have and do you play? What do you teach?
I can teach basically any style because it's all the well. What you're dealing with is 6 strings. Mm-hmm. You're dealing with major, minor chords, and a few others thrown in there. And if the student wants to learn theory, which is the language of music, and we're talking about the notes, that sort of thing, that's fine also. But I don't force that on them. And right now I have a pretty good batch of kids. I have several middle school guys that I've gotten them together for an ensemble. Well, actually it's a rock and roll band. And right now we're working on Eagles tunes and a song by the Ramones, and they're just really having a ball with it, and we're going to have a drummer come in and play with these guys, and I'm going to take them on a field trip to probably Guitar Center in Decatur, let them see what a big, confusing, noisy music store looks like.
And that's a big one.
Oh,
that's a big one.
It's very big. I went there, that's where I got Epi. This is Epi. This is a Les Paul Gibson Epiphone custom shop, which means some guy built it. Some guy touched this guitar and built it.
Yeah.
And this is my newest instrument, which I did get in Decatur. This one I got...
Now that is a beautiful guitar.
Yeah,
I love that one.
This is Gibson ES 175 archtop jazz guitar. And I swapped out a classical guitar for this one at a shop in Buckhead for even swap. So I came out pretty good with that.
You came out way ahead on that as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Now you're probably wondering, well, why is it an arch top?
Go ahead. I think I know why it's an arch top, but go ahead.
It's an arch top because the front here is not flat. It's in an arch. Okay?
I thought you meant why did they make an arch top guitar? But go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. This is, most people would classify this as a jazz guitar. Mm-hmm. Myself, I bought one because one of my earliest guitar heroes, Steve Howe, played with Yes. That's his autograph up there, by the way. You can't see it in the camera shot. But he played one of these in the early Yes, with Yes in the 70s, and he was my favorite guitar player in the 70s. And so his is identical to mine and vice versa. I mean, they even look the same. So this guy offered me a clean, even swap for this 175, well, I just couldn't resist it.
Now that's called a sunburst, isn't it? If I remember correctly.
Yeah. It's called a sunburst.
Looks like bright to dark. Yeah.
And these lines here, that's called pillow top. Mm-hmm. And this is also custom shop. And the way you can tell it's a custom shop is the binding. It comes around here. And you can't see it on camera, but you've got a little pinstripe. That tells you
somebody took some time with
somebody took some serious time and did some detail on it by hand. Now, the difference between this guy and this guy is like night and day. This is a classical guitar, and this is what I play most of my jobs on out at Reynolds Plantation. And I play classical guitar also, and I do teach classical. This has nylon strings. Mm-hmm. Most people would identify this as a folk guitar or a Spanish guitar.
Okay.
But it has nylon strings as opposed to like the steel strings on this is Lois, by the way. I've got Epi and I've got Lois. You have to name your guitars.
You have to name them, okay.
You have to name your guitars. And these have the steel strings.
Yeah.
And this has a totally, well, I don't know, I guess you could call it warmer, warmer sound.
Now, something I've noticed on guitars, I used to play a long time ago, is that on a classical guitar, no thank you, we'll wait till this is later. On a classical guitar, the neck is wider.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Why is it wider? And sometimes it feels like the strings are a little bit higher than on, say, a rock and roll.
Well, you know, classical guitar music is a totally different animal from, say, rock and roll or Dickie Betts or the Allman Brothers that I was playing a few minutes ago. Classical guitar style requires that you really, really stretch the fingers in these bizarre ways to get to these bizarre chords to make this gorgeous music. In my case, it's not always gorgeous, but anyway, believe it or not, the fatter neck of a classical guitar facilitates those stretches better than a thin neck.
Okay.
Because on a classical guitar, you have to have the thumb low like this.
Positioned differently.
If you've got a smaller neck, the thumb's going to curl over like this, and as a result, the wrist is going to come in like this, and you can't do these stretches like this. So you have to have more of an angle like this. Now, I can get about 1, 2, 3, what's that, about 5.
That's 5 frets.
Yeah, and there are some guys who can go 7. I'm serious.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, especially these guys at University of Georgia, these students coming in who compete for audition slots. These guys come in there and can play like Jose Feliciano, and they're like 17.
Did you see the movie Crossroads by any
Yes, I
chance?
did.
And the guy that actually played the rock and roll was the guy that actually did the classical guitar playing in that movie.
Yeah.
And he was a classically trained guitar player. And if you ever get a chance, check that movie out, and you'll see classical guitar or classical style played on a full-blown electrical guitar.
That's right. As a matter of fact, there was a guy, his name is, I think, Arlen Roth. Is very famous in the world of guitar players. You know, you see him in all these magazines giving tips on how to play. Arlen Roth taught Ralph Macchio,
Yeah.
the Karate Kid.
Yeah.
Taught him how to play for this movie. And Steve Vai, the devil's advocate, so to speak, he is a Berkeley graduate.
Exactly.
He went to Berkeley College of Music, I think, the one in Boston.
What a talent.
Yeah.
What a talent.
I mean, it's like 10 million notes. Gee, Steve, do you think you could play just maybe a few more? Oh, by the way, while you're at it, could you maybe go a little faster?
Yeah.
Just a little faster. Really kind of slow over there, Steve. But who's the guy? Sean Penn was in a movie a couple of years ago about a jazz guitar player.
I haven't seen that one.
And this guy, I think it was the same guy that taught Ralph, whatever his name is, taught Sean Penn just for this movie. Sean Penn actually plays those guitar parts, the jazz guitar parts.
Sweet.
And I read somewhere that he had practiced like 8 or 9 hours a day to get ready for this movie. And here's the bad part. Okay, after the movie was over, he's like, that's it for me.
Don't like it. I'm going to go to something else now.
That's it for me.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah,
that really
at least that's the rumor. I really don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah, getting back to that question I asked you a while ago about why some guitars are flat and some are arch-topped. I saw this on the Road Show the other day, so I'm not saying it's true, but this is what I heard, that they originally made, like the L4s and all the bigger guitars, when they were having the big band era, they had to make them so much bigger and so much rounder to compete with the other instruments in the band. And that's why they made them like that.
Well, back then they didn't have
no amplification.
No amplification.
Yeah, exactly.
Segovia, Andre Segovia, who many consider the father of Western classical guitar style, he died at 97 and back in the late 80s, once said the electric guitar was an abomination.
Until Les Paul came along.
But see, Segovia was born in the late 1800s, so the only thing he knew was non-amplified instruments.
Yeah.
So when the electric guitars came along, the Beatles came along, and all those guys, even the Django Reinhardt did not play with an amplifier. And he's a prime example of that style of jazz guitar playing with a large band, and you can still hear this guy.
Who was the famous folk singer, back in the 60s, the guy, what was his name? The one that was, I'll get back to this in a second. I'll think of this story. But what it was he was